Hi, everybody. This is Jason Sherman, and in today's episode of Zero to CEO, I speak to coach, speaker, and author Phyllis Quinlan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Awesome. And today we're going to talk about building a positive workplace to attract and retain talent. This is awesome. Growing up, I remember Google had this awesome culture of positivity to keep people at their, you could do your laundry, you can go bowling, you can eat food, you can do yoga, you can bring your dog to work. So it's really cool, positive kind of atmosphere. What are your thoughts on the way companies do that and why it's so important to create an atmosphere that's very healthy at a workplace?
I think it's really a leadership imperative right now to understand that the world has changed post-COVID and that the workers have changed post-COVID. And I don't mean burned out, because that is not what I'm experiencing. That's not what I'm hearing from my coaching clients. What I'm hearing when I ask, tell me about how you navigated COVID or how that experience was for you, almost to a person, they say, well, I realize I'm stronger than I ever thought I could be. That's the language of growth. That is not the language of burnout. And it's really important that today's leaders, CEOs, understand that the workforce has transformed into a more competent and confident group based on their COVID experience, whether it was professional or personal, which means that leadership today has to level up in order to be able to lead people differently. Transactional leadership is just gone forever. We have to lead from a more humanistic, relatable, and authentic center, and organizations need to level up.
And you mentioned COVID a lot too in your answer. What changes specifically did you see happen during COVID that are so different now than they were before?
I think it's the fact that people realized their inner strength, that they really had what it took to address their professional situations or their personal situations. My target audience and my background is healthcare, so of course we got hammered. And
sorry for that.
and it was really, a lot of people and a lot of media want to talk about healthcare providers being burned out now. That's not my experience. That's not the reality of what I'm hearing from my clients or my colleagues. It is that we have transformed.
It sounds like they more understood what the problems were and they were able to maybe tackle them a little easier with the experience of what COVID caused, maybe. So they're able to.
Well, I think the best description is, we were building a plane while we were flying it. And and it was one of those things where it wasn't just something that happened at work and then we went home and had our lives. Nobody went home from COVID. We did what we had to do at work, and then we went home and had our lives amidst COVID.
Right.
So that there was a real transformation in thinking about what's important to me post-COVID. How have I changed post-COVID? Not how have I been stressed or burned out. How have I grown?
Right. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And, when you build the positive work environment, which is really what we're trying to accomplish as a leader of a company, how do we then attract the people that are going to be good for that positive work environment? We don't want disruptive behavior. We don't want negative Nancys, right? We want the people that are going to also give more to that positive work environment.
Well, absolutely. And I think if we are, one of the silver linings of COVID is people are now focusing more on self-care and putting their own oxygen on first, if you will.
Right.
And I think it's really important that if your staff and your leaders are focusing on those things, you can't ask them to come to work in a disruptive or toxic work environment. You're going to have to take a look at the pillars of a healthy work environment, especially around dealing with disruptive behaviors in the workplace. So, we all have those people who are either engaging in chronically uncivil behavior or even abusive bullying behavior. And I can tell you right now, people are just not going to tolerate it. You will bleed talent if you don't address that head on.
How do you address it? I mean, because that's not easy to do. I mean, I've worked in different startups or companies where there were bullies or people that were trying to say they were better than you or trying to bark orders, more of a dictatorship than a leadership. How do you navigate that without losing your job or without offending somebody?
Right. Well, the first thing you have to understand is you don't take on these disruptive behaviors, whether it's chronic incivility or bullying, without buy-in from management, executive leadership, and human resources. If you don't have their buy-in to sit down and address the problem head on, don't bother, because what will happen, especially when you're dealing with bullying, abusive behavior, is that they use dysfunctional communication so well that they can actually turn the situation around and make it appear as though you're the bully, and then you wind up exiting the
Oh
organization
my God.
as opposed to them.
That
So,
sounds
rule
terrible.
number one, unless management, executive leadership, and HR are on board with you, you're gonna have to make a decision to tough it out or move on.
What if you're the CEO of a startup and you got funding from an investor or group of investors and they are the ones creating the toxic environment or the disruptive behavior or the bullying and you're kind of stuck there? What
Yeah.
is there any way to get around that?
That's a tough one because they hold the purse strings and there is undeniable power there. The only thing I would offer someone in a startup at that point is to keep, revisiting mission and purpose and organization, the importance of a healthy organizational culture with your investors so that they get a return on their investment. If they are going to engage in behavior that we know is going to drive talent away, it's important to either do a presentation or constantly revisit that and share that this is giving you exactly what you don't want for
Right.
your investment.
I totally agree 100%. And you have to have some level of emotional intelligence to be able to navigate these situations. What role do you believe emotional intelligence plays in creating a supportive workplace?
Well, I think emotional intelligence is the antidote for chronic incivility. Those folks who are engaging in chronic incivility, they're not abusive. They have just low emotional intelligence and they just never quite grew up to be accountable and responsible for their behavior. And really, we all know who these folks are. In your mind's eye, if I said to you, think of the person in your organization and if they called in sick, even though you're working short, you'd have a better day.
That's a really
Because
good way to look at it.
Right, because these people suck all the energy out of the room. They're chronically, moaning and groaning, drama, drama, drama. They're disruptive. They distract you. You wind up having to do part of their work. It's just really arduous to keep these people on board. And I can tell you now what I am hearing is that perhaps people would have tolerated, coworkers would have tolerated that pre-COVID.
But
They're
not so
just
much
not going to
anymore.
tolerate it anymore. They're going to find a place where they can thrive and not have to put up with nonsense.
Man, this is eye-opening for me. I mean, I deal with a lot of this myself, so it's definitely a touchy topic for me. If you had to give a CEO or a leader the key elements of a healthy workplace, and this is what you have to do, you say to them to make this happen, what do you say to them?
You need to take a look at how communication is in your place. And there is something called appreciative inquiry, which is the change management model for the 21st century, appreciative inquiry. And what I usually do is I take a look at a department or an organization and I will ask some appreciative questions around communication. So, three questions. What about communication in this department is working? If you had a dream, what would communication in this department look like? And what's the barrier or the gap? How come we're not living the dream? And you would do that drill down for skilled communication, true, collaboration, decision making, staffing, authentic leadership. You would do it around those things that we know the great thought leaders around healthy work environments are offering us as to the guidelines or the foundations for creating a workplace where people thrive and really want to stay.
Now, let's say you did this, right? You created a healthy workplace, you have a positive environment, it's going well, but you don't have enough people to help you scale your business. How do you then attract people to your business? And then we already know how to retain them, but how do you attract them in the first place? Because
Right.
you're saying everyone has a new outlook after COVID. So,
Yes. So, you're going to, once you establish a healthy work environment where people are thriving, that is word of mouth gets out. The word of mouth will get out about a lousy work environment, but word of mouth will get out, just like you said before, Google, Apple, the people that are really leading the forefront of some of very innovative workplaces. The word gets out. What's important is to be very selective about who you invite in. So I think it's best for CEOs and entrepreneurs to think in terms of not hiring an employee, but inviting someone to have citizenship in your company and really interviewing around that language and culture concept. This is our culture. And if we offer you this position, we're offering you a sense of citizenship, not employment. And you're going to be held accountable or to the role of a good citizen. And you can even do just-in-time coaching when you see someone departing from that kind of wanted behavior, the behavior you're looking to anchor and grow. You would say, I just need to tell you that what I observed is not in alignment with citizenship in this
Mm.
organization. So I need for you to either work with the company coach or seek a coach or tool up in some way so that, our your behavior and our culture match better.
That makes a lot of sense because you're basically saying a person has to improve themselves in order to join your company because they are not aligned with your, I guess, your vision. So is it something that there's a way to maybe help them or give them advice and say maybe work on these three things and come back in 6 months? Is that something that is this possible or?
These things are absolutely possible. I, of course, being a professional coach, would go with either retaining an outside coach as a virtual internal coach, or actually having an internal coach on board at your company, because it takes a tremendous amount of time to work with people to grow their emotional intelligence. It takes consistency, it takes time, it takes effort. I don't know too many CEOs who have that kind of time to be able to invest. And if you're sending people to classes, that's one thing, but having a coach will hold them accountable to what they are learning, not just, yes, check a box, I took a class. So you really need to have dedicated people. And I know that managers and leaders feel that, well, geez, that's part of my job. And I agree with you. It is part of your job, but do you have the time to do it in the manner that will give you the return that you're looking for in a change of behavior and attitude?
That's fantastic. Now, let's say you own a business and you're starting to notice those toxic things pop up and the behavior is not exactly what you want. How can you start to change that behavior and that work environment so that you do get the positive environment you're looking for?
I would go directly to my leadership because, it's the old story of the fish rots from the head, right? So, if you see these pop-ups, then that kind of signals to me that my leaders are not necessarily doing purposeful rounding with the staff. They're not checking in. They're not really looking. They're not really observing. And this will happen from time to time because we get very busy, especially with new initiatives and new campaigns. But it's really important that you hold your leaders accountable to maintaining the sense of code of conduct and code of citizenship. And once you have your leaders in place, then that will cascade down, so to speak, to the desk side, if you will.
That makes sense. Now, I know this all sounds like we live in a perfect world. Everything we're saying about being in a positive environment and getting rid of the bullies and no toxicity. But let's say you're in a company or you're part of a company and it's a difficult work environment, but you can't leave. You're happy with the actual job and you like the people you work with, but there's just these difficult things. Maybe it is the leadership that's causing the problem and you're kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place, right? You're like, on one hand, if I leave, I'm not going to get a better job. And then if I stay, I'm going to be miserable because of this. Are there kind of any tactics or strategies you can implement to at least deal with this situation you're in rather than just quitting?
So, I get asked this, quite a bit. What happens if the boss is the bully? And my answer to that is you're in trouble. And I don't mean to be glib, okay? Because
That's not great.
no, and I don't mean to be glib, but if the boss is the bully, I have a hard time accepting that executive leadership doesn't know exactly what's going on and is condoning it for whatever reason, whether it's the person is a cash cow or the person has ties to the board or whatever their feeling of security is. The executive leadership of the organization has chosen to turn a blind eye and not deal. There is no way you're going to win. You are actually going to ruin your reputation if you try to deal with it. So you only have two choices. You try very hard to make sure that the rest of your life is where you want it to be, that you are taking good self-care and maintaining your mental health and your sense of physical well-being, and of course your relationships outside of work. And then you just stay very focused on doing the best job you possibly can, and keeping notes about achievements and benchmarks and things that are accomplished. Other than that, you really are unfortunately a bit powerless, more than a bit. You are powerless to do something if executive leadership refuses to acknowledge the situation.
Well, thanks for that truth serum. Hopefully everyone here understood and learned something from all of this. Where can people find out more about what it is you do if they want to, talk to you about your services?
Well, I'd love for them to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit, Phyllis Quinlan on LinkedIn. And they can also reach out to me with my website, which is MFW Consultants, Michael Frank William, MFW Consultants to Professionals.com, MFWconsultants.com. Or please feel free to email me at mfwconsultants@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from everybody and also start a conversation around how I could help you secure a healthy work environment for the future.
Awesome, Phyllis. Thank you so much. Hope you guys liked this episode and learned something, and hope you can have a positive work environment. We'll see you guys in the next episode.